I never told my son how much I really earned, $40,000 a month, even though he always saw me living a simple, everyday life. One evening, he invited me to dinner with his wife's parents, who were visiting from abroad. I decided to test how they would treat someone who seemed poor, so I pretended to be a struggling, naive mom. But the moment I stepped into that restaurant, everything changed. What happened that night shocked my daughter-in-law and her family in ways they never expected. And honestly, they had it coming. Here's how it all unfolded. Let me show you who I really am. My son Marcus, now 35, never knew the truth about me. To him, I was just a woman who left early for work, came home tired, cooked simple meals, and lived an ordinary life. Maybe a secretary, maybe just another employee. I never corrected him. I never told him I made $40,000 every month, that I spent almost 20 years as a senior executive at a multinational company, signing million-dollar contracts, making decisions that affected thousands of people. Why would I? Money was never something to show off. I grew up in a time when dignity mattered more than words, and silence often carried more weight than boasting. So I kept my life private. I lived in the same modest apartment for years. Used the same leather bag until it wore out. Bought clothes on sale, cooked at home, saved and invested quietly. And over time, I became wealthy without anyone really knowing, because real power doesn't need to announce itself. True power speaks for itself. I was watching closely when Marcus called me that Tuesday afternoon. His voice sounded different, nervous, like when he was a kid who knew he'd done something wrong. "Mom, I need a favor," he said. "Simone's parents are visiting from overseas. It's their first time here. They want to meet you. We're having dinner on Saturday at a restaurant. Please come." There was something in his tone that made me uneasy. It wasn't just a son inviting his mother. It was someone worried about being embarrassed, trying to make a good impression. I asked calmly, "Do they know anything about me?" There was a pause. Then Marcus hesitated. "I told them you work in an office, that you live alone, that you're simple, that you don't have much." Simple. That word hit me, as if my whole life could be summed up in one tiny adjective, as if I were something to apologize for. I took a long, steady breath. "Okay, Marcus, I'll be there." After we hung up, I looked around my living room. Old but cozy furniture, plain walls, a small TV, nothing that would impress anyone. And in that moment, I made a decision. If my son believed I was poor, if his wife's parents were coming to judge, I would give them exactly what they expected. I would act like a struggling, naive, desperate mother, someone barely getting by. I wanted to see their true faces, to find out if they really measured people by money. My instincts told me they did, and I never ignore instincts. Saturday came. I put on the worst outfit I owned, a light gray, shapeless, wrinkled dress. I wore the kind of outfit you'd find at a thrift store. Old, worn-out shoes, no jewelry, not even a watch. I grabbed a faded canvas tote, pulled my hair into a messy ponytail, and looked in the mirror. I looked like a woman life had beaten down. Forgettable. Perfect. I got into a taxi and gave the driver the address, a high-end restaurant in the most exclusive part of the city. The kind of place where the menu doesn't even list prices, where a single table setting can cost more than most people make in a month. As we drove, I felt a mix of emotions. Excitement, because I knew something big was about to happen, and sadness, because part of me still hoped I was wrong, that they would treat me kindly, that they would look past my worn clothes. But another part of me, the part that had spent 40 years in the corporate world, negotiating million-dollar contracts, knew exactly what awaited. The taxi stopped. Warm lights glowed from the restaurant. A doorman in white gloves greeted guests. Elegant people walked inside. I paid, stepped out, took a deep breath, and walked through the doors. There they were. Marcus was near a long table by the windows, wearing a dark suit, white shirt, and polished shoes. He looked nervous. Simone, my daughter-in-law, stood beside him in a cream dress with gold details, high heels, and perfectly straight hair. She looked flawless, but she wasn't looking at me. She was glancing at the entrance, tense, almost embarrassed. And then I saw them. Simone's parents, seated like royalty. Veronica, her mother, wore a fitted emerald dress covered in sequins, with jewelry sparkling on her neck, wrists, and fingers. Her dark hair was pulled into a perfect bun. Veronica had that cold, calculated kind of beauty that could intimidate anyone. Beside her was Franklin, her husband, wearing a flawless gray suit, a huge watch on his wrist, his expression serious. They looked like they had walked straight out of a luxury magazine. I walked toward them slowly, taking small steps, like a woman unsure of herself. Marcus saw me first. His face changed. His eyes widened, and I noticed him swallow. "Mom, you said you'd come," he said, his voice tight, uncomfortable. "Of course, son. Here I am," I replied with a timid smile, the kind of smile a woman not used to these kinds of places would give. Simone gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. Cold, mechanical. "Mother-in-law, it's nice to see you," she said, but her eyes said the opposite. She introduced me to her parents in a strange, almost apologetic way. "Dad, Mom, this is Marcus's mother." Veronica looked at me slowly, and in that instant I saw everything. The judgment, the disdain, the disappointment. Her eyes scanned my wrinkled dress, my worn shoes, my faded canvas tote. She didn't say anything at first, just extended her hand, cold and weak. Franklin did the same. A weak handshake, a fake smile, polite but hollow. I sat at the end of the table, farthest from them, like a secondary guest. No one helped me with my chair. No one asked if I was comfortable. When the waiter arrived with the heavy, elegant menus in French, I opened mine and pretended I didn't understand a word. Veronica watched me closely. "Do you need help with the menu?" she asked, her smile polite but distant. "Yes, please. I don't understand these words," I said softly, almost timidly. She sighed and ordered for me. "Something simple," she said. "Something that doesn't cost too much. We don't want to overdo it." "We don't want to overdo it," Veronica said. The words hung in the air. Franklin nodded. Marcus looked away. Simone fiddled with her napkin. No one spoke after that. I just watched. Veronica started with small talk. The flight from abroad, how tiring it had been, how different everything was here. But soon, the conversation shifted. She began mentioning money, the hotel they were staying at, $1,000 a night, the luxury car they rented, the shops they visited. "We bought a few things, nothing major, just a few thousand," she said, glancing at me as if expecting me to be impressed. I just nodded. "How nice," I said. "That's lovely." She smiled, the kind of smile that felt like superiority. "You know, Ara, we've always been careful with money. We worked hard, invested well. Now we own properties in 3 countries. Franklin has major businesses and I oversee our investments." Then came the question, sweet but sharp. "And you? What exactly do you do?" "I work in an office," I said, lowering my gaze. "I do a little bit of everything. Paperwork, filing, simple things." Veronica exchanged a glance with Franklin. "Ah, administrative work. That's fine. Honest work. All jobs are dignified, right?" "Of course," I replied calmly. The food arrived, huge plates with tiny portions plated like art. Veronica carefully cut her steak. This costs $80, she said. But it's worth it. Quality is worth paying for. You can't just eat anything, right? Of course, I nodded. You're right. Marcus tried to steer the conversation to work projects, but Veronica interrupted him. Son, does your mother live alone? Marcus nodded. Yes, she has a small apartment. Veronica looked at me with fake pity. It must be difficult, isn't it? Living alone at your age without much support. And, does your salary cover everything? I felt the trap closing. Calmly, I replied, I manage. I save where I can. I don't need much. Veronica sighed dramatically. Oh, Ilara, you are so brave. Truly, I admire women who struggle alone, although, of course, one always wishes to give their children more, a better life. But, well, everyone gives what they can. Her words landed like a quiet blow, implying I hadn't done enough for my son, that I was a poor, insufficient mother. Simone stared at her plate. Marcus clenched his fists under the table, and I just smiled. Yes, you're right. Everyone gives what they can. Veronica continued, her voice sharp with pride. We always made sure Simone had the best schools, travel around the world, 4 languages. Now she has an excellent job, earns very well, and when she married Marcus, we helped them quite a bit. The down payment on their house, their honeymoon, because that's who we are. We believe in supporting our children. Then she turned to me, her gaze piercing. And you? Were you able to help Marcus when they got married? Her question hung in the air, sharp as a knife. Not much, I said quietly. I gave what I could. A small gift. Veronica smiled sweetly. How thoughtful. Every detail counts, right? The amount doesn't matter. It's the intention that matters. And that's when the anger began to stir inside me. Not loud or explosive. Cold. Controlled. Like a river flowing under ice. I breathed slowly, kept my timid smile, and let her continue, letting her believe she had the upper hand. I let her keep talking, because that's what people like her do. They talk. They boast. They show off. And the more they talk, the more they reveal themselves, the emptier they seem. Veronica swirled her glass of deep red wine, pretending to be an expert. This wine is from an exclusive region in France, $200 a bottle. But when you know quality, you don't skimp. Do you drink wine, Ara? Only on special occasions, I said, and usually the cheapest one. I don't understand much about these things. She smiled condescendingly. Oh, don't worry. Not everyone has a trained palate. That comes with experience, travel, education. Franklin and I have visited vineyards in Europe, South America, California. We're quite knowledgeable. Franklin nodded. It's a hobby, something we enjoy. Simone is learning too. She has good taste. She inherited it from us. He looked at Simone proudly. Simone offered a weak smile. Thanks, Mom. Veronica turned to me, her gaze sharp. And you, Ara, any hobbies? Anything you enjoy in your free time? I shrugged. I watch TV, cook, walk in the park. Simple things. Veronica and Franklin exchanged a look, heavy with judgment. How lovely, Veronica said. Simple things have their charm, of course, although one always aspires to more, right? To see the world, experience new things, grow culturally, but, well, I understand not everyone has those opportunities. I nodded. You're right. Not everyone has those opportunities. The waiter arrived with dessert, tiny, delicate portions that looked like edible art. Veronica ordered the most expensive one, $30 for a single piece of cake. The dessert was tiny, about the size of a cookie. Veronica took a bite and sighed in delight. This is delicious, she said. It even has edible gold on top. See those little flakes? Only the best restaurants do this. I ate my simpler, cheaper dessert in silence. Veronica continued, her tone shifting. You know, Ara, now that we're all here, I think it's important we have a family conversation. Her expression became serious, almost falsely maternal. Marcus is our son-in-law, and we love him very much. Simone loves him too, and we respect that. But as parents, we always want the best for our daughter. Marcus tensed. Mom, I don't think this is the time. Let me finish, son, Veronica interrupted, raising her hand. This is important. She turned to me. Ara, I understand you did the best you could raising Marcus. I know it wasn't easy, and I respect you for that. But now Marcus is at a different stage in life. He's married, he has responsibilities, and, well, Simone and he deserve stability. Stability? I asked softly. Yes, she replied. Financial stability, emotional stability. We've helped a lot, and we will continue to help. But it's important that Marcus doesn't have unnecessary burdens. Her words hit clearly. She was calling me a burden. Me, his mother. Simone stared at her plate, wanting to disappear. Marcus's jaw was clenched. Burdens? I repeated. Veronica sighed, speaking slowly, deliberately. I don't want to sound harsh, Ara, but at your age, living alone with a limited salary, it's natural for Marcus to worry about you, to feel he must take care of you. And that's fine. He is a good son, but we don't want that worry to affect his marriage. Do you understand me? Perfectly, I said, keeping my smile calm. Veronica returned a satisfied smile, convinced she had the upper hand. I'm glad you understand, Veronica said. That's why we wanted to talk. Franklin and I have been thinking we could help you financially. A small monthly allowance. Something to let you live more comfortably without Marcus worrying so much. Obviously, it would be modest. We can't perform miracles, but it would be a support. I stayed silent, watching her, letting her words hang in the air. And in exchange, she continued, we'd only ask that you respect Marcus and Simone's space, not to reach out so often, not to pressure them, just to let them build their life together without interference. How does that sound? There it was. The offer. A bribe disguised as charity. They wanted to buy me off, to make me disappear from my son's life. So I wouldn't be a nuisance. So I wouldn't embarrass their precious daughter with my poverty. Marcus couldn't hold it in. Mom, that's enough. You don't have to. Marcus, calm down. Veronica interrupted, her voice clipped. We're talking like adults. Your mother understands, right? I picked up my napkin, wiped my lips, took a sip of water and let the silence stretch. Every pair of eyes was on me. Veronica, expectant. Franklin, arrogant. Simone, ashamed. Marcus, desperate. Then I spoke. My voice had changed. It was no longer timid, no longer small. It was firm, clear, and cold. That's an interesting offer, Veronica. Truly very generous of you. Veronica smiled, victorious. I'm glad you see it that way. I nodded, calm. But I have a few questions, just to be sure I understand. Veronica blinked, slightly off guard. Of course. Ask whatever you like. I leaned forward slightly. How much exactly would you consider a modest monthly allowance? Her intentions? To pity me? To humiliate me over dinner? To offer charity so I would disappear? Franklin opened his mouth, but said nothing. Marcus was pale. Mom, please, he whispered. I looked at him. No, Marcus. Please don't. I'm done being quiet. I placed my napkin on the table and leaned back. There was no more timidity in my posture, no more shrinking. I looked Veronica directly in the eyes. She held my gaze for a moment, then quickly looked away, uncomfortable. Everyone could feel the shift. Veronica, I said, calm but firm. You said something very interesting a moment ago. You said you admire women who struggle alone, who are brave. Veronica nodded slowly. Yes, I did. Then let me ask you something. Have you ever struggled alone? Have you ever worked without your husband backing you? Built something with your own hands, without your family's money? Veronica stammered. I have my own achievements. Like what? I asked, genuinely curious. Tell me. Veronica adjusted her hair nervously. I manage our investments. I oversee properties. I make important decisions in our businesses. I nodded slowly. Businesses your husband built. Properties you bought together. Investments made with money he generated. Or am I wrong? Franklin interjected, annoyed. That's not fair. My wife works just as hard as I do. Of course, I replied calmly. I don't doubt she works. But there's a difference between managing money that already exists and creating it from scratch. Between overseeing an empire you inherited and building it brick by brick. Don't you think? Veronica pressed her lips together, clearly uncomfortable. I don't know where you're going with this, Ara. Let me explain, I said. 40 years ago, I was 23. I was a secretary I started in a small company, earning minimum wage. I lived in a rented room. I ate the cheapest food I could find, and I was completely alone. Marcus stared at me. He had never heard this story in such detail. One day, I got pregnant. The father disappeared. My family turned their backs on me. I had to decide, keep going or give up. I chose to keep going. I worked until the last day of my pregnancy. I went back 2 weeks after Marcus was born. A neighbor looked after him during the day. I worked 12 hours a day. I paused, took a sip of water. No one spoke. I didn't stay a secretary. I studied at night, took courses, learned English at the public library, accounting, finance, administration. I became an expert in things no one taught me, all on my own, while raising a child alone, while paying rent, food, medicine, clothes, all alone. Veronica was staring at her plate. Her arrogance was starting to crack. And do you know what happened, Veronica? I climbed, step by step. Secretary to assistant, assistant to coordinator, coordinator to manager, manager to director. 20 years of non-stop work, sacrifices you can't even imagine. But I did it. And do you know how much I earn now? Veronica shook her head, her lips slightly parted. $40,000 a month. The silence was absolute, as if the universe itself had paused. Marcus dropped his fork. Simone's eyes went wide. Franklin frowned in disbelief. And Veronica froze, mouth open. $40,000, I repeated. Every month, for almost 20 years. That's nearly $10 million in gross income over my career, not counting investments, bonuses, or company stock. Veronica blinked several times. No, I don't understand. You earn $40,000 a month? Veronica repeated, incredulous. That's right, I said calmly. I am the regional director of operations for a multinational corporation. I oversee 5 countries. I manage budgets of hundreds of millions of dollars. I make decisions that affect more than 10,000 employees. I sign contracts you couldn't read without lawyers. And I do it every single day. Marcus went pale. Mom, why didn't you ever tell me? I looked at him tenderly. Because you didn't need to know, son. I wanted you to grow up valuing effort, not money. I wanted you to become a person, not an heir. Money corrupts, and I wasn't going to let it corrupt you. Simone whispered, Then, why do you live in that small apartment? Why wear simple clothes? Why not drive a luxury car? I smiled. Because I don't need to impress anyone. True wealth isn't shown off. The more you have, the less you need to prove it. I turned to Veronica. That's why I came dressed like this tonight. That's why I pretended to be poor. I wanted to see how you would treat me if you thought I had nothing. I wanted to see your true colors. And, boy, did I see them? Perfectly. Veronica's face flushed red. Shame, rage, humiliation, all mixed together. This is ridiculous, she stammered. If you earned that much, we would know. Marcus would know. Why would he ever believe you're poor? Because I let him, I replied. Because I never talked about my job. Because I live simply. Because the money I earn, I invest. I save. I multiply. I don't spend it on flashy jewelry or expensive restaurants. Franklin cleared his throat, trying to regain control. Even so, this doesn't change the fact that you were rude, that you misinterpreted our intentions. I looked at him steadily. Really? Misinterpreted? I said calmly. When you called me a burden to Marcus? When you offered me $700 a month to disappear from his life? When you mocked my clothes, my work, my entire existence? Franklin stayed silent. Veronica said nothing. I stood up. Every eye at the table turned to me. Let me tell you something no one has ever told you, I said steadily. Money does not buy class. It does not buy real education. It does not buy empathy. You may have money, maybe a lot of it, but you don't have a single ounce of what truly matters. Veronica shot up from her chair, furious. And you do? You lied. You deceived us. You made us look like fools. I didn't make you look like fools, I replied coldly. You did that yourselves. I simply gave you the space to show who you are, and you did it perfectly. Simone's eyes filled with tears. Mother-in-law, I didn't know. I know, I said gently, cutting her off. You didn't know. But your parents did. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew they were humiliating me, and they enjoyed it. Until they realized the woman they looked down on had more than they did, and now they don't know how to handle that. Veronica was shaking. You have no right. I have every right, I answered, because I am Marcus's mother, because I deserve respect, not because of my money, not because of my job, but because I am a human being, something you forgot this entire evening. Marcus stood up. Mom, please, let's go. I looked at him calmly. Not yet, son. I'm not finished. I turned to Veronica one last time. You offered to help me with $700 a month. Let me make you a counteroffer. The table went silent. I'll give you $1 million right now, if you can prove you ever treated someone with kindness when you believed they had nothing. Veronica opened her mouth, then closed it. No words came out. Exactly, I said softly. You can't. Because to you, people are only worth something when they have money. Only valuing people by what's in their bank account. That's where you and I are different. I built my wealth. You simply spend yours. I earned respect. You try to purchase it. I have dignity. You have numbers on a screen. I reached into my worn canvas tote and took out a black platinum credit card. I placed it calmly on the table in front of Veronica. This is my corporate card, I said. There's no spending limit. Use it to pay for the entire dinner and leave a generous tip. Think of it as a gift from the poor, naive mother you thought I was. Veronica stared at the card like it might bite her. It was black and polished, my name engraved in silver. Aller Sterling, Regional Director. Her fingers shook slightly as she picked it up. She turned it over, studied it, then looked at me. The smug confidence was gone. In its place was something new, something I never expected to see in her eyes. Fear. I don't need your money, she said, her voice unsteady. I know, I replied evenly. Just like I didn't need your pity. Yet you handed that to me all night long. So take this as a lesson in basic courtesy, something all your international travel clearly didn't teach you. Franklin tapped the table sharply. Enough. This has gone too far. You're being disrespectful. Respect? I repeated. Interesting that you mention it now. Where was your respect when your wife questioned whether my salary was enough to survive? Where was it when she called me a burden to my own son? Where was it when she tried to pay me to disappear from his life? Franklin's jaw tightened. She only wanted to help, he said stiffly. No, I corrected him calmly. She wanted control. She wanted to make sure the poor mother didn't damage her daughter's perfect image. She wanted to remove what she believed was the weak link. I paused, looking straight at them. The problem is, she chose the wrong one. Simone's head was bowed, her hands trembling in her lap. Simone, I said softly. She looked up, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know. I didn't know my parents. I interrupted gently. You did know. Maybe you didn't know about my money, but you knew who your parents are. You knew how they treat people they consider inferior, and you didn't stop them. Simone sobbed. I wanted to say something, but they are my parents. I know, I said. And Marcus is my son. I let him make his own choices, pick his life, his wife, his path. That's what love really means, freedom. Not control, not money, not manipulation. Marcus stepped closer, his voice breaking. Mom, forgive me. Please forgive me for never asking, for assuming, for thinking you were. I pulled him into a hug. You don't have to apologize, son. I did what I did for a reason. I wanted you to be independent, to value the right things, to build your own life without depending on me financially. But I also felt I had to protect you, he whispered. I thought I had to worry about you, that you were fragile. I know, I replied. And it wasn't wrong for you to think that. That's how you learn to care, to worry about others, to be empathetic. Lessons money can't buy. Marcus held me tightly. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Veronica was still standing, rigid, watching with a mix of confusion and barely contained anger. This doesn't change anything, she finally said. You lied. You deceived us. You came here with hidden intentions. You acted in bad faith. That's true, I nodded. I acted. I pretended to be someone I'm not. Exactly what you do every single day. What is that supposed to mean? Franklin asked sharply. It means you hide behind money, I replied calmly. Behind jewelry, trips, and expensive things. But inside, there's nothing there. No depth, no real curiosity, no meaningful conversations, nothing to offer beyond a bank balance. Veronica let out a dry, bitter laugh. Coming from someone who lied all night, that's hypocrisy. Maybe, I said evenly. But my lie revealed the truth. Your truth. And now you can't hide anymore. Now you know I saw you. I felt every comment. I heard every insult disguised as advice. And I won't forget it. The waiter approached hesitantly. Excuse me, would you like anything else? Franklin waved him off. Just the check. The waiter nodded and quickly walked away. Veronica sank back into her chair. Her posture had changed. The elegance was gone. What replaced it wasn't humility. It was loss. Not of money, but of control. Ara, she said, her voice softer now, less sharp. I don't want this to ruin the relationship between our families. Marcus and Simone love each other. They're building a life together. We can't let this... Let this what? I interrupted. Let this ruin your plans? Let this expose what you really think? She froze. It's too late for that, Veronica. The damage is already done. But we can fix it, she insisted. We can start over. No, I said firmly. We can't. Because now I know who you are, and you know who I am. And that truth can't be erased with empty apologies or fake smiles. I looked at her steadily. You treated me like I was nothing, and you enjoyed it, because you believed you could. Franklin cleared his throat, irritated. You're the one who came here lying. You created this situation. You're right, I nodded. I did provoke this, because I needed to see the truth. I needed to know. I needed to confirm what I had suspected all along, that they are not good people, that money doesn't make you better, that they are exactly the kind of people who look down on anyone who doesn't have what they do. Veronica wiped at her eyes. We're not bad people, she said softly. Maybe not, I replied, but you're definitely not good. And there's a big difference between the two. The waiter returned with the check and left it in the center of the table. No one moved. Veronica glanced at my black card in her hands, then back at me. I'm not going to use your card, she said. We'll pay our own bill, as we always do. Perfect, I said. Then keep it, as a souvenir. A reminder that not everything is what it seems, that the woman you spent all night judging actually has more than you will ever have. And I'm not just talking about money, I added. Veronica pushed the card aside. I don't want it. I don't want your moral lecture either. I nudged it back toward her. Keep it. Something tells me you'll need it someday. One day, you'll meet someone like me, someone who pretends to be less than they are, and you'll make the same mistake, because people like you never learn. Franklin pulled out his wallet, flipped through his golden shiny cards and picked one to pay. The waiter took it and left. The room fell silent. Thick, uncomfortable, heavy. Simone quietly wiped her tears. Marcus held my hand. Veronica stared at the wall. Franklin checked his phone to avoid looking at anyone. The waiter returned. Sir, your card was declined. Franklin's face went red. How can that be? That's impossible. This card has an extremely high limit. The waiter repeated calmly. It was declined. Do you have another form of payment? A system error, the waiter said, shrugging. I can try again if you like. Franklin handed him another card. The waiter left. Veronica glanced nervously at her husband. What happened? She asked. I don't know, Franklin replied, irritation creeping into his voice. It must be a bank error. Maybe they froze the account for security. It happens sometimes when you travel. I nodded slowly, with perfect calm. Of course. These things happen. How inconvenient. The waiter returned. I'm sorry, sir. This one was also declined. Franklin jumped to his feet. This is ridiculous. I'm calling the bank right now. He stormed out of the restaurant. Veronica stayed seated, silent, ashamed, humiliated. This has never happened to us, she murmured. Never. What terrible timing, I said, my voice perfectly even. Marcus looked at the check. Mom, I can… No, I interrupted gently but firmly. You are not paying for anything. I reached into my old leather wallet, the one worn from years of use. I pulled out a card. This one not black, not ordinary. Transparent. Heavy metal. A card less than 1% of people in the world even possess. I placed it on the table in front of Veronica. Her eyes went wide. She recognized it immediately. That's a Centurion card, she whispered. That's right, I replied. American Express. Exclusive invitation only. Minimum annual spending requirement, $250,000. Annual fee, $5,000. Benefits? Things you can't even imagine. Veronica had no words. The waiter approached carefully, almost reverently, took the card and returned in under 2 minutes. Thank you, Miss Sterling. Everything is settled. Would you like the receipt? No, I said. It's not necessary. The waiter nodded and left. Veronica's gaze remained fixed on the space where the card had been, a look of disbelief on her face. I stood up, slung my canvas tote over my shoulder, picked up my old wallet, and looked at Veronica one last time. People behave. None of this is your fault. You loved who you love, and that is always the right choice. Don't carry the weight of their arrogance on your shoulders. Simone sniffled, wiped her tears, and nodded. Marcus stood beside her, holding her hand, both of them trying to steady themselves. I took a deep breath, feeling the last remnants of tension leave the room. Now, I said gently, let's leave the judgments, the money, the pretenses behind. We know who we are, and that is enough. I picked up my canvas tote and leather wallet, slung them over my shoulder, and gave Veronica and Franklin one final glance. Not anger, not triumph, just clarity. This dinner, I said, my voice calm and even, was served with lessons on the side. Remember them. I walked toward the door. The restaurant lights reflected off the windows, warm and forgiving, while behind me, the weight of their expectations and false superiority hung frozen in the air. As I stepped outside, Marcus and Simone flanked me, silent, relieved, grateful. The night air felt crisp and clean. The city lights stretched out before us, full of possibility, and I realized that in exposing the truth, I had given more than money or status ever could. I had given freedom. Veronica and Franklin remained behind, staring at the empty chairs, the unrealized power of their wealth, and the undeniable presence of someone who had earned everything without ever needing them. And for the first time, they understood that money could never buy the one thing they truly lacked: respect. No, I said firmly, squeezing his hand. It doesn't bother me. It amazes me. But more than that, it teaches me something. That life isn't about showing off. It's about doing. About building. About integrity. About knowing your worth without needing anyone else to validate it. Marcus nodded slowly, still digesting it. I wish I had known sooner. I wish I had appreciated everything you went through. You did, I said softly. In your own way. You lived it, you grew from it, and you became a good man. That's what matters. Now, you see me clearly, and that's enough. Simone wiped her tears and looked up at me, a fragile smile forming. I want to be like you someday. You will be, I replied, letting a small, warm smile touch my lips. But remember, it's not the wealth you inherit. It's the lessons you carry. Respect, humility, strength. Those are the things no money can buy. We started walking down the quiet street together. The city lights sparkled like distant stars, but for once, they didn't feel intimidating. They felt full of possibility. Free from judgment. Free from pretense. Free to be exactly who we were. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly rich. Not because of money, not because of status, but because of clarity, dignity, and the unshakable knowledge that I had done what mattered most, lived with integrity, raised my son right, and refused to be diminished by anyone. The restaurant behind us faded into the night, its warm glow now just a memory of a lesson well learned, for them, for us, and for anyone who thinks wealth can define a person. They measure people by what they have, by what they can give or take. My way measures by what people do, by their integrity, by how they treat others, by the effort they put into building a life worth living. Money is a tool, not a measure of worth. Power is fleeting, but character lasts forever. Marcus nodded slowly, letting the words sink in. I think I understand now. I've seen both sides tonight, and I want to follow your way. I placed a hand on his shoulder. Then that's all I ever wanted for you, son. To see you choose the right path. Not the easy one, not the flashy one. To see you value people for who they are, not for what they have. That's the legacy I leave you. Not money, but the lessons that money can't buy. The taxi doors closed, the city hummed around us, and for the first time I felt truly at peace. Marcus beside me, Simone somewhere behind, and a lifetime of choices ahead, built not on fear, not on expectation, not on appearances, but on respect, effort, and the courage to live authentically. And in that quiet, fleeting moment I realized the richest things in life aren't in accounts, cards, or investments. They're here, in the people you raise, in the truths you uphold, in the dignity you refuse to surrender. Than ever. I smiled, a real smile this time. I love you too, son. And remember, love isn't proven by how much you endure in silence, but by the boundaries you're brave enough to set. The taxi pulled away. I leaned back against the seat, the city lights blurring past the window like distant stars. My heart felt heavy. Yes, but steady, calm, grounded. I hadn't gone to that dinner to win. I hadn't gone to teach anyone a lesson. I went because sometimes the truth demands space to reveal itself, and sometimes the only way to see people clearly is to let them believe you have nothing. That night, I didn't expose my wealth. I exposed values. And as the car carried me home, I knew this. Whatever happens next, holidays, birthdays, awkward smiles across tables, I will never again shrink to make others comfortable. I will never trade my dignity for peace, because real power isn't in the ability to dominate or humiliate. It's in the choice to walk away whole. A long moment, the glow of the screen soft against the dark of the taxi. I didn't feel anger when I read Simone's words. I felt exhaustion and clarity. I typed slowly, choosing honesty over comfort. Simone, I believe you, and I appreciate that you reached out. But forgiveness is not something that happens because someone asks for it. It happens when actions change. I'm willing to talk, not tonight, not to soothe guilt, but another day when we can speak as two women, not as representatives of our families. What matters now is what you do next, not what you say. Take care of Marcus. Take care of yourself. I sent the message and put the phone back into my tote. The taxi turned onto my street. Quiet, modest, familiar. The kind of place Veronica would never understand. The kind of place where peace lived without announcing itself. When I stepped inside my apartment, I kicked off my worn shoes, hung my faded coat, and poured myself a glass of water. No marble countertops, no designer art, just silence and safety. I stood by the window for a moment, looking out at the sleeping city. That night didn't make me stronger. It reminded me that I already was. I hadn't won a battle. I hadn't proven anything that truly mattered. What I had done was protect my dignity, model boundaries for my son, and close a door that should never have been open to disrespect in the first place. Tomorrow I would wake up early. I would go to work. I would make decisions that moved companies, countries, and thousands of lives. But tonight, I allowed myself something far more valuable than power: rest. Because real wealth isn't what you reveal when challenged. It's what remains when the noise finally stops. And as I turned off the light, I knew this with absolute certainty. No one would ever look down on me again, not because of my money, but because I would never again allow it. Believe in it because I've seen what happens when people swallow it for too long, he said, eyes still on the road. It turns into bitterness, or illness, or regret. I've driven people to hospitals, to funerals, to divorce courts. The ones who suffer the most are the ones who never said what they needed to say. I let his words settle. The city hummed softly around us, traffic lights blinking like slow heartbeats. You know, he continued, money shows you who people are, but pressure does it faster. Same with silence. Silence is heavy. When someone finally drops it, you can feel it in the car. He glanced at me again in the mirror. That's what I felt when you got in. I smiled, not out of politeness this time, but recognition. You're wiser than you think. He chuckled. Oh, I think I know exactly how wise I am. Life taught me. Not gently, either. The taxi slowed as we approached my building. I gathered my tote, feeling lighter than when I had stepped into the restaurant hours earlier. Before I opened the door, he spoke once more. One last thing, ma'am. Yes? Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting your dignity. People who benefit from your silence will always call you cruel when you finally speak. I held his gaze in the mirror and nodded. Thank you. I'll remember that. I stepped out into the quiet night. As the taxi drove away, I stood there for a moment, breathing in the cool air. I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant. I was simply done. Done explaining. Done shrinking. Done carrying other people's discomfort as if it were my responsibility. Inside my apartment, the clock ticked softly. I placed my keys on the table, sat down, and allowed the stillness to wrap around me. Tomorrow would come with meetings, decisions, expectations. But tonight belonged to me. And for the first time in a long while, that was more than enough. Count money? Yes. If you count freedom? Absolutely. If you count peace of mind, most days. If you count love, memories, and the ability to sleep at night without fearing tomorrow, then I am richer than most. He nodded slowly, as if filing that answer away. That's the best definition I've heard in a long time. The light turned green and the car rolled forward. You know, he said after a moment, I've driven billionaires who were terrified of losing everything, and men with nothing who laughed the whole ride. Richness isn't about what you hold. It's about what holds you together when things fall apart. I looked out the window at the passing streetlights. That's exactly it. Money is useful. It buys time, comfort, choices, but it doesn't buy character. And it certainly doesn't buy peace. He smiled faintly. My wife used to say something similar. She said, if you lose money, you can earn it back. If you lose your name, you'll spend the rest of your life chasing it. She was very wise, I said. Yes, he replied quietly. That's why I still talk to her sometimes. Out loud. People think that's strange. It's not strange at all, I said. It means she's still part of you. He didn't answer right away. The car slowed as we neared my building. When we stopped, he turned slightly in his seat. You'll be all right, he said with certainty. Not because you're strong, but because you're honest. Honest people always land on their feet. It might hurt on the way down, but they land. I smiled, feeling something warm settle in my chest. Thank you for the ride, I said, and for the conversation. Anytime, he replied. Some fares pay in money, others pay in stories. Tonight was a good one. I stepped out of the taxi, the door closing softly behind me. As the car pulled away, I stood there for a moment, letting the quiet surround me. Inside, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I didn't need to prove who I was to anyone anymore. Be a much kinder place. I smiled and reached for the door handle. Maybe, but kindness starts one person at a time. He nodded with respect. Take care of yourself, he said, and don't ever change. I won't, I replied. I stepped out of the taxi and watched it drive away. The street was quiet, the kind of calm that only exists late at night. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the stillness. No applause, no drama, just peace. As I walked toward my building, I felt something settle inside me, a deep certainty. I had lived my life honestly. I had worked hard. I had loved deeply. And I had stayed true to myself, even when it would have been easier to show off, to explain, or to defend. I unlocked my door and stepped inside my modest apartment. The familiar space welcomed me, the couch I'd had for years, the lamp I liked because of its warm light, the quiet that felt safe, not lonely. I set my canvas bag down, kicked off my shoes, and sat for a moment. No regrets, no anger, just clarity. Some people spend their whole lives chasing status, approval, and control. I chose something else. I chose freedom. I chose dignity. I chose peace. And that, more than any salary, any card, or any title, is what makes me truly rich. Be better. I reached into my wallet. How much is it? $30, he said. I handed him 100. Keep the change. He looked surprised. Ma'am, this is too much. It isn't, I replied calmly. You listened. You gave me perspective. You reminded me that there are still decent people out there. That's worth far more than $70. He took the bill carefully, almost respectfully. Thank you. Truly, thank you. No, I said, smiling. Thank you. And hold on to that honesty of yours. It's rare. Don't lose it. I won't, he promised. I stepped out of the taxi and closed the door. Before driving off, he rolled down the window. One last thing, he said. Whatever happened tonight, don't regret it. Don't feel guilty. People like you, the ones who speak the truth even when it's uncomfortable, are the ones who make the world better. Slowly. One conversation at a time. I smiled, feeling the weight of his words. I'll remember that. The taxi pulled away. I stood for a moment in front of my building, looking up at my 5th floor window. Dark, quiet, waiting for me. Inside, I chose the stairs as always. I liked walking. It kept me grounded. When I reached my door, I used the same keys I'd carried for 15 years and stepped inside. The apartment was cool and silent. I turned on the light. Everything was just as I'd left it. The modest living room, the small kitchen, the dining table with mismatched chairs, the plain walls with no expensive art. And I felt completely at peace. This place was mine. Not designed to impress. Not meant to prove anything. Just a home where I could exist as myself, without pretending, without performing. I slipped off my worn shoes, changed out of the wrinkled gray dress, and put on my soft, familiar pajamas. I made a cup of tea, sat on the couch, and turned on the TV. The news. Nothing worth watching. I turned it off. I sat there in the quiet, letting the night settle, thinking about everything that had happened, and for the first time all evening, I felt nothing heavy at all. I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the warmth settle in. Go on, son. What's on your mind? There was a pause on the line. I could hear him gather his thoughts, the weight of the previous night still lingering in his voice. It's Simone. I talked to her. Really talked. About everything. About how her parents treated you. About boundaries. About respect. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a mixture of pride and relief. And? I asked softly. She listened. She cried. She apologized. She said she never realized how damaging her parents' behavior was, how controlling and condescending they could be. And she wants to change. She wants us to help her, guide her, be honest with her. I don't know if she'll ever be perfect, but she wants to try. A smile spread across my face, warm and unguarded. That's all any of us can do, Marcus. Try. And it sounds like she's willing to learn. That's what matters. I wanted you to know first. You taught me last night that being honest, standing your ground, showing people their true selves, it's powerful. I hope I can do the same. I want to protect Simone, but I also want to let her grow. I want to be the kind of husband you've taught me to be. I felt a lump in my throat. You already are, son. Just by thinking that way. Just by wanting to be better than what you witnessed. That's the difference between living under the weight of someone else's expectations and choosing your own path. He was quiet for a moment, then said, I love you, Mom. I really do. And I understand now. Everything. Thank you for showing me how to see people, for teaching me what matters. I love you too, Marcus. More than you'll ever know. Keep learning, keep observing, and keep being the man I know you can be. He breathed out a shaky laugh. I will. I promise. And Mom? Yes, son? Thank you. For being you. For everything. I hung up, set the phone down, and took another long sip of coffee. Sunlight spilled across the window, touching the worn floors of my apartment. For the first time in years, I felt fully aligned with myself. Free, honest, at peace. No money, no title, no reputation. Nothing could replace this. And for the first time, I didn't need anything else. Exactly what you always do, Mom. You force them to see themselves, to face the truth they've been ignoring for years. That's when Veronica lost it completely. She screamed, called Simone ungrateful, selfish, said I was being brainwashed by you. Franklin tried to intervene, but it only made things worse. I had never seen them like that. It was terrifying and liberating at the same time. I set my mug down, my fingers tightening slightly around the handle. And Simone? How did she respond? Marcus took a deep breath. She stayed calm. She repeated what she said before, that their behavior was unacceptable, that she wouldn't let them treat her, or anyone, like that again. And then, she walked out. She left the restaurant. She told them she needed space, that she needed to think. She didn't yell, didn't fight, just left. Mom, I've never been more proud of her. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. She's finding her own voice, Marcus. That's what matters. They may never fully understand, but Simone, and you, will. And that is worth more than any apology they might give. He exhaled slowly. It was hard, Mom, seeing them like that, humiliated, angry, shocked. But I also realized something important. I realized that you were right. Money isn't respect. Power isn't love. What you showed me last night, it wasn't about money. It was about dignity, honesty, and boundaries. And now, Simone and I, we know what we'll accept in our lives, in our marriage, in our family. I reached across the table and touched his hand gently. Exactly, son. That's all you ever needed to see. You don't need to change anyone else. You just need to know who they are and choose how you respond. That is freedom, Marcus. That is true strength. He nodded, his eyes thoughtful yet calm. I get it now, Mom. I really do, and I think this is the first time Simone's parents have ever truly seen us as people, not just as numbers or status. Maybe it'll take time, but it's a start. And I have you to thank for that. I smiled warmly. No, son. You did it. You and Simone. I only gave you the chance to see clearly. The rest, standing up, speaking your truth, that was all you. Marcus's lips curved into a small, relieved smile. Then, maybe last night wasn't just a battle. Maybe it was a lesson. For all of us. Yes, I said softly. And lessons like that last a lifetime. Exactly right, son. I said softly, feeling a swell of pride. Sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones we have to experience ourselves, but having a guide, someone who shows you the path without forcing it, makes all the difference. You and Simone are learning to navigate life with integrity, with clarity. That's more valuable than anything money can buy. Marcus exhaled deeply, a mixture of relief and gratitude in his voice. I understand now, Mom. I understand why you acted the way you did. You didn't just protect me or Simone. You gave us a mirror. You showed us who they are and who we want to be, and it's not the same as them. We can choose better. I smiled, reaching across the table even though he was on the phone. Exactly. That's the lesson you carry forward. Boundaries, honesty, dignity. You can love your family without letting them dictate your life or diminish your worth. You can be kind, generous, and strong at the same time. He paused for a moment, then said quietly, Mom, I hope one day I can be even half the person you are. I felt a lump in my throat. You already are, Marcus. You already are. And with Simone by your side, you'll both build a life that honors those values. That's the true legacy, not money, not status, but how you treat others and what you demand of yourself. He smiled softly, and for a long moment we were silent, sharing that unspoken understanding that comes from lessons learned, battles fought, and respect earned. Finally, he said, I love you, Mom. I love you too, son, I replied. Always. Happy? I shook my head slightly. No, not really. They had wealth, yes, but they carried an emptiness no amount of money could fill. They measured life in possessions and appearances, not in love, respect, or connection. And that's why my lesson mattered. Not for me, but for Marcus, for Simone, for anyone willing to see the world differently. I stayed on the bench a while longer, watching a child chase a stray dog, parents laughing together, an elderly couple holding hands. There was richness here too, richness that couldn't be bought, counted, or shown off. It was authentic, quiet, and alive. And for the first time in years, I felt I truly belonged in this world, not because of my achievements or my wealth, but because I had lived with honesty, courage, and heart. As the sun climbed higher, warming my face, I smiled. Life wasn't about proving anything to anyone anymore. It was about living it fully, seeing clearly, and valuing the things that truly matter. Money, status, appearances, they were tools, nothing more. But love, respect, integrity, they were treasures beyond price. And in that moment, I knew that whatever storms came next, Marcus and Simone would face them with clarity and strength. They had seen the difference between wealth and worth, and they would carry that lesson forward, just as I had hoped. I stood, stretched, and began walking again. The city moved around me, alive and indifferent, but I moved through it with lightness in my step and peace in my heart. The lesson of the night, of the restaurant, of the confrontation, it wasn't about vengeance or proving myself or showing off. It was about truth. And truth, I realized, always sets you free. Very, she said with a wink. Philosophy is just noticing what's obvious, but forgetting it every day. I laughed softly. She had a point. Most people spent their lives chasing what didn't matter, thinking it would make them whole. And yet, here she was, sitting quietly, feeding pigeons, at peace with the world, and fully alive. You know, I said, I spent a night seeing exactly who some people really are. And it was enlightening, to say the least. She tilted her head, curious. Enlightening? Yes, I replied. Some people use wealth to hide emptiness. Others use it as freedom. Some teach, some control. Some love, some manipulate. And the difference is astonishing. She nodded slowly, as if she had seen it all before. The trick, child, is not to let others teach you their emptiness. Learn from the world, from life, from the little things that endure, like pigeons, like simple kindness, like honesty. That's where the wealth really is. I smiled, a deep, contented smile. You're right. I think I'm finally starting to understand that. She chuckled. Good. Now go enjoy your life before the week gets crazy again. Don't let anyone's greed or arrogance or vanity weigh you down. They're just birds with scruffy feathers. I stood, feeling lighter than I had in years. Thank you. I will remember that. As I walked away, I glanced back at her and the pigeons. Life was simple. Life was honest. Life was rich. Not in gold, but in truth. And for the first time in a long while, I felt that richness deep in my bones. I stepped aside to let her in. Simone, I said softly. She took a hesitant step forward. Mother-in-law. I'm sorry. I've spent the last 3 days thinking about everything. About my parents. About you. About how I reacted. About how I allowed things to happen the way they did. I don't want to be like them. I gestured to the living room and she sat on the sofa across from me. I remained in my chair, keeping the space gentle but grounded. I know, I said, and I can see it. You came here differently than you did that night. You came here honestly. Her eyes glistened. I never wanted to see you hurt or humiliated. I wanted to please my parents, to keep the peace. But I see now that peace built on lies is no peace at all. I nodded. Exactly. And the good news is, you can choose differently. You can learn, you can grow. It's not about erasing the past, it's about what you do from now on. She let out a shaky breath. I want to learn. I want to be better. I want Marcus and I to have a life free from manipulation, free from constant judgment. I don't want to be defined by money or power, by appearances or status. I smiled warmly. Then you've already started. The willingness to reflect, to see the truth, is the first and most important step. Everything else is just practice. Simone looked down at her hands. Do you forgive me? I leaned forward slightly. Simone, forgiveness isn't about erasing what happened. It's about recognizing the effort someone is making to be better. And I see that effort in you. So yes, I forgive you. And I'll support you as you learn. Her shoulders relaxed and a tear rolled down her cheek. Thank you. Truly. Thank you for not giving up on me, for showing me a different way. I nodded, letting the quiet settle between us. Now, we move forward. Honestly, without pretense. That's the only way to live well. And for the first time, Simone's smile was real. Not polished, not taught, not performed, but genuine. And I knew, deep down, that change, true change, had begun. Look, every disguised insult. I know now who they really are. And I know it's not your fault that they act this way. Simone's eyes filled with tears. Thank you for saying that. I was afraid you'd think I was just defending them, that I was like them. I shook my head gently. No, Simone. I see the part of you that is thoughtful, kind, and willing to learn. That part of you is what matters. Your parents' actions don't define you. How you respond to them does. She swallowed hard, her voice small. I've been so scared of disappointing them, scared of losing their love, scared of being judged. I thought staying silent was easier, but now I see how wrong that was. I leaned back slightly. Fear can be powerful, yes, but growth comes when you act despite fear. You've already taken the first step by coming here, by admitting the truth and wanting to do better. Simone exhaled slowly, as if a weight had lifted from her shoulders. I want to be better. I want to break this cycle for Marcus, for us, for our future family. I don't want to live trapped by their expectations or their mistakes. I smiled softly. And you can. But remember, change doesn't happen overnight. Be patient with yourself. Be honest in your intentions. And don't confuse guilt with growth. You've already started on the right path. She looked at me, a small, hopeful smile forming. Thank you. Truly. Thank you for not giving up on me, for seeing me clearly even when my parents made it hard. I nodded. That's what family is for. Not just blood, but honesty, respect, and guidance. And now, Simone, it's your turn to decide how you will live with that. Her eyes glimmered with determination. I will. I promise. And in that quiet moment, I knew that for the first time, she had chosen a path that was hers alone, one built on awareness, honesty, and the courage to be better. Decision. Freedom often feels strange at first, especially when you were raised to confuse obedience with love. Simone nodded slowly. I still love them, she said. But I finally see that loving them doesn't mean shrinking myself, or letting them hurt others, or letting them decide who I am. That realization, I replied, is the beginning of adulthood. Not age, not marriage. Clarity. She looked at me with a mixture of relief and fear. I'm scared, though. What if they never change? What if they punish us with silence, or money, or inheritance? I met her gaze calmly. Then you will grieve the parents you wished you had, not the ones you actually have. And that grief is painful, but it's honest. A life built on fear of punishment is far more expensive than any inheritance. Simone let out a shaky breath. Marcus said something similar. He told me he'd rather struggle honestly than live comfortably under control. I smiled. That's the man you married. She smiled back, then grew serious again. I don't expect you to forgive them. I wouldn't, if I were you. I just want you to know that I will never allow that behavior toward you again. Or toward anyone. If they do it, I will speak. Even if my voice shakes. That, I said gently, is all I needed to hear. We sat in silence for a moment. Not an awkward silence, one of understanding. Finally, Simone stood up. Thank you. Not just for forgiving me, but for respecting me enough to tell the truth. Most people would have stayed quiet to keep the peace. I stood as well. Peace that requires silence from the wounded is not peace, it's surrender. She nodded, eyes shining. I'm glad Marcus has you as his mother. And I'm glad, I replied, that he chose someone brave enough to unlearn. At the door, she hesitated. May I come again sometime? Yes, I said. As yourself. Always as yourself. When she left, the apartment felt quiet again, but not empty. It felt settled. I made myself another cup of tea and sat by the window. Outside, life moved on, unaware of the small but profound shifts that had just taken place. And I thought, not for the first time, that real wealth is this: the courage to tell the truth, the strength to walk away from control, and the grace to grow without becoming cruel. Some people spend their entire lives earning money. Very few learn how to earn peace. The way you do. People will call you naïve, weak, impractical. But if you stay aligned with your values, you will sleep peacefully at night, and that is worth more than any approval. Simone's eyes filled again, but this time with something steadier than pain. I'm willing to learn, she said, even if it's uncomfortable. That's all it takes, I replied. Willingness. She exhaled as if releasing years of tension. I don't want to raise children who think they're better than others because of money. I don't want to repeat what I grew up with. Then don't, I said simply. Teach them by example. Let them see respect in how you speak to waiters, cleaners, strangers. Let them see restraint when you could show off. Let them see generosity without cameras, humility without shame, and boundaries without guilt. She nodded, absorbing every word. And one more thing, I added gently. You will never fully change your parents. That is not your responsibility. What you can change is the access they have to you. Love does not require proximity to harm. Simone swallowed hard. That's the hardest part. It always is, I said. Because society teaches us that family deserves everything, no matter the cost. But healthy families don't demand self-erasure. She stood up, calmer now, grounded. Thank you. Not just for accepting me, but for seeing me, for not lumping me in with them. I never did, I replied. I judge people by how they listen when the truth is uncomfortable. And you listened. At the door, she hesitated again. I hope one day I can be even half the woman you are. I smiled, warm and certain. You don't need to be half of me. You just need to be fully yourself. She left quietly. I closed the door and leaned against it for a moment, breathing deeply. Outside, the world continued as always. Inside, something had shifted, subtly, permanently. That night at the restaurant had not destroyed a family. It had revealed one. And sometimes, revelation is the first step toward healing. No expectations. Just two women holding on to truth. When we pulled apart, Simone looked lighter, as if she had set something heavy down for the first time. She smiled, not the polished smile I had seen before, but a quiet, genuine one. I should go, she said. Marcus is waiting. Go, I replied. And remember, growth is not loud, it's consistent. She nodded, took one last look around my apartment, and left. I closed the door softly behind her and stood there for a moment, listening to the silence. It felt different now. Not empty, complete. I went to the window and watched her walk down the street, shoulders straighter than when she had arrived. I knew the road ahead of her wouldn't be easy. Breaking cycles never is. There would be guilt, doubt, moments of weakness and pressure from people who benefit from things staying the same. But she had taken the hardest step already, seeing clearly. That evening, Marcus called. She talked the whole way home, he said with a small laugh, about values, about simplicity, about how she wants to live. That's a good sign, I replied. Thank you, Mom, he said quietly, for not hardening, for not pushing her away. I didn't do it for her, I answered honestly. I did it for myself. But sometimes, when you choose yourself, others learn how to choose better too. After the call, I made a simple dinner. Soup, bread, nothing special. I ate slowly, without distractions, savoring the ordinary comfort of it. Later, I washed the dishes by hand, feeling the warm water, grounding myself in the present. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about Veronica and Franklin. About fear disguised as pride. About trauma turned into control. I didn't hate them. I pitied them. Not in a superior way, just in the way you pity people who are prisoners of something they refuse to name. I also thought about Simone, about Marcus, about the quiet, powerful choice they had made to live differently, and about myself. I had spent years shrinking, not because I had to, but because it was easier. Easier to avoid envy, easier to avoid judgment, easier to avoid conflict. But shrinking had a cost. It required silence when honesty was needed. That chapter was over. I turned off the light with a calm certainty I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't proud of humiliating anyone. I wasn't proud of the confrontation. But I was proud of one thing. I had chosen integrity over comfort, truth over approval, peace over performance, and that, I knew, would guide every step of my life from now on. Because real wealth is not what you can reveal to silence others. It's what you no longer need to hide to feel whole. Yes, I did. Very much. What you've written is emotionally complete. It lands exactly where it should. Quiet, grounded, and resolved. After all the tension, confrontation, and moral weight earlier in the story, This ending chooses peace over spectacle, and that's its greatest strength. Here's why it works so well. The closing theme is consistent and earned. The idea that real wealth is peace, authenticity, and love isn't just stated. It's proven through everything that came before. By the time you say it, the reader already feels it. The tone matures with the character. Early chapters are sharp, confrontational, almost operatic. The ending is calm, reflective, confident. That tonal shift mirrors Alar's inner liberation beautifully. No revenge fantasy at the end, just boundaries. You don't overpunish Veronica and Franklin. You simply remove their power over the narrator's emotional life. That restraint makes the message stronger and more believable. The final identity statement is powerful. Mother, executive, woman, survivor, fighter, rich in every sense that truly mattered. This reads like a quiet manifesto. It's not loud, but it's unshakable. If I had one optional suggestion, not a correction, you could slightly tighten a few sentences near the very end to sharpen the impact. Shorter lines tend to land harder in conclusions. But stylistically, what you chose fits the reflective mood. So this is purely a preference, not a necessity. Overall, this reads like the final chapter of a novel or a long-form viral story that resonates because it's not about money. It's about self-respect, class, and emotional sovereignty. If you want, I can help you edit it for publication. Medium, Substack, short story, or screenplay. Rewrite it into a shorter, punchier version for online audiences. Analyze it from a literary or psychological angle, or help you decide where it could end if you wanted it even quieter or even sharper. Just tell me what you'd like next. Did you enjoy the story? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let's meet in the comments. If this story touched you, you can support me with a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for your support. I'm excited to read your comments and hear where you're listening from. On the screen, you'll also see 2 more life stories I highly recommend. There's so much more waiting for you on my channel, so don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story, with love and respect.